Our next speaker may need a little introduction to this audience, but I will provide an introduction. We're very pleased to have a recovering attorney present here in the moot court room at the S.J. Quinney College of Law. That's part of Governor Spencer Cox's description. He's also a husband, a father, a farmer, and most importantly, he's our 18th governor here in the state of Utah. He took office on January 4th, 2021. Since taking office, he's secured funds for affordable housing. He's promoted suicide prevention and mental health resources and implemented, most importantly for our purposes today, water conservation and infrastructure planning. He's also made contributions in early education, workforce program funding, and he's launched the Utah Sustainable Health Collaborative and expanded opportunities for women, diverse communities, and those living in the rural parts of the state. He's promoted the concept of a One Utah vision. The governor is a sixth-generation Utahn. He was born and raised in Fairview. He met his wife, First Lady Abby Palmer Cox, at the age of 16. He attended Snow College, Utah State University, and the Washington and Lee University Law School, after which he clerked for U.S. District Court Judge Ted Stewart. He also worked at a Salt Lake City law firm. He then moved back to Fairview to raise his 4 children. He began his public life as a city councilman, a mayor, county commissioner, a state legislator, before being appointed to serve as Utah's lieutenant governor in 2013, and then now serving as our 18th governor. Governor Cox, we're very pleased to welcome you here today. Look forward to your comments. If I understand correctly, you'll be available to take some questions up until we're finished at quarter after. So thank you very much for joining us.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's such an honor to be here with you today on a beautiful spring-ish day. It's great to be here in this building and to see so many incredible partners that are working on this critical issue. I want to thank the university for their leadership when it comes to water conservation and specifically the Great Salt Lake. And I have no idea what I'm going to say today. You've had a busy day already, an incredible agenda with many people who are smarter than I am when it comes to the science around the lake. You also have a full agenda today, in which you will be hearing from the Speaker of the House, Brad Wilson, a dear friend, a great public servant, and an incredible partner when it comes to efforts around the Great Salt Lake. Now, Brad and I do this. Is Brad here yet? I don't think he is here yet. Brad and I do this thing where we go places and we speak to people, and we often speak about what has happened policy-wise in the state. Of course, that's why we're here. And I usually get to go first, which means that I say all the things that he is going to say as well. And the last thing you need today is to hear the same thing multiple times, although there's probably been a little bit of that. And so as I was preparing last night and this morning, I thought maybe I would go a little different direction than the amazing talking points that I have here in front of me. And I'm going to do something that will probably offend many of you, but that's okay. I'm going to governor-splain just a little bit about what we do and why we do it and how to do it better. If any of you read the book Think Again, it's a great book. It's one I recommend people. In fact, for those of you that have read it, I will tell you that every year I gift a book to the legislature, to all 104 members of the legislature, with the hopes that they will read something, and that it will be something that I recommend, and that it will be something that make them better. And this year I gave them the book Think Again. It's a small book. It's been a couple years actually since I read it, so I need to read it again as well. But the idea behind it is he's trying to get people. He says basically there's three ways of thinking through problems. You can think like an evangelist, a pastor, a preacher, and that is, I know I'm right, God is on my side, and the other side is wrong. He talks about how that's not a great way to persuade people, okay? He says you can think like a politician, which is, kind of he talks about a politician. He talks about a prosecutor even more, and that is, if we have some attorneys, again, I'm a recovering attorney, the prosecutor is, it doesn't matter what the facts are. I have to get the facts on my side right. And many politicians are thinking more like prosecutors these days, right? It's my tribe. I'm right. Even when I know I'm wrong, I can never admit that. I've got to hold the other side accountable and make them pay. And that's what prosecutors do, right? They present the facts in the best light for their case. That's what attorneys are trained to do. We always said, if the facts are on your side, argue the facts. If the law is on your side, argue the law. And if neither are on your side, just argue like hell. That's what prosecutors do. All right. And that's, so there's that side of thing. And then he talks about scientists. And his effort here is to convince more people to think like scientists. Scientists are curious. Scientists recognize that they might be wrong. Scientists are willing to engage with thoughts that are different than theirs to challenge their previously held assumption. At least the good scientists do this. And we have many scientists here today. There is a peer review process that scientists go through, right? Where they have to open themselves up to challenges from other people who are also very smart. And his main point is, think how different our world would be if all of us, especially politicians, thought more like scientists. Right? If we were a little more curious, less willing to admit when we're wrong, willing to be challenged, willing to take other ideas and carry them with us, and then see if our ideas hold up to that. I believe we do have some politicians like that. I try to be one. I don't always get it right. Sometimes I'm wrong, and sometimes I get a little dogmatic myself and a little more combative than I should be. Now. So why am I sharing all of this? Well, I also, though, want to push back just a little bit on the thinking like scientist realm of things. And I think there are some lessons that we learned during the pandemic. Scientists actually are not good at convincing non-scientists about things. And we certainly saw that, I think, during the pandemic. One of the reasons is that scientists are just inherently smarter than the rest of us, because you are experts. You do know more than we know. And I'm using we as politicians and just average members of the public, okay? And sometimes where scientists see nuance and humility and a lack of surety, because scientists are highly intelligent, especially in their area of expertise, there is often an unwillingness to share that nuance with the public. And so we're afraid that average people aren't smart enough to know what we know. And so we just have to tell them the parts that they can understand or should know, and we make it seem like we're much more sure of it maybe than the actual scientist is in an effort to bring them along. Now, I believe we saw this behavior during the pandemic. I think we saw it often. I would have conversations with experts in the field who would, to me, admit nuance. This is what we think, but we're not sure. And then their messages to the public were, this is true. You cannot question it or challenge it, and this is the only way. And what would happen is oftentimes the surety was maybe 60-40 in their own minds, but they were selling it or explaining it as 100% surety. And then if it turned out not to be true, there was a lack of trust. And you will hear me, my staff is tired of me, but speaking about trust, to me, trust is the currency of governing. Trust is the currency of society. It's the currency of community, and we are losing trust in institutions. We lost trust in political institutions a long time ago, although that is continuing to erode. We are rapidly losing trust in scientific institutions and community institutions. And I think that phenomenon that I just mentioned is sometimes at the core of why we're losing that trust. Now, politicians are famous for exacerbating that trust in ways that benefit them but are destructive to society. And I know you can all think of many examples of politicians who have used fear and divisiveness and who will take a partial truth and or a partial mistruth and exploit it for their own benefit, which is decidedly harmful and destructive. I will say this, there are a couple things that we saw during the pandemic that were very helpful. I wish that every scientific department would embed a social scientist with them in what they're doing. People that understand human nature, not just the nature of a virus or the nature of the Great Salt Lake or the nature of climate change. I think we need a lot more social scientists embedded with you, the scientific community, and with politicians as well. I will tell you that our pandemic response, and I had a front row seat for that, changed dramatically, I think in a very positive way, when we embedded someone who would become the president of the University of Utah. He was the dean of the business college at the time, but someone who understands human nature, who understands the economic nature of humans very well. And our approach to the pandemic, our public health approach to the pandemic got much better. And I believe the scientists would tell you this as well, because they've told me, and I don't think they were lying to me, Angela Dunn and others who were in those rooms, when then the dean of the business school here at this incredible university, Taylor Randall, was in the room with Angela Dunn, and they were having these conversations back and forth about how the messaging would be received and what the reactions would be, and helping her to understand how the economics of our state work and human nature in responding to things like this. The messages changed, they got better, and I believe our response was better because of it. Now, why do I share all of this? Over the past couple years especially, we've had a very robust and I think important, a critically important discussion about how to respond to growth in our state, and how to respond to changing climate in our state, and how to respond to a mega drought, a 20-year drought that has been impacting the Western United States. The scientists in the room look at the cold hard facts, at least the facts as we have them, in an effort to explain what is happening, why it's happening, and what will happen if conditions do not change. And that is a very important discussion. That's why all of you are here. And I'm grateful for it. My job is very different than that. My job, at least done appropriately, is to take that information and translate it into the language of the people of the state of Utah. I have a friend who's in marketing, and he says he says that the best companies translate the truth of them into the language of their customers or potential customers. And I believe that the best politicians are, again, able to translate the truth of them or the truth of what is happening into the language of our citizens in a way that will build trust. Because trust is really important, and understanding human nature is absolutely critical. There is, unfortunately, a growing divide, a political divide, that is infiltrating every level of society. In fact, I think it is now, sadly, the single most important definer of every institution. Is your institution a left-leaning institution or a right-leaning institution? Now, let me be clear. I do not think this is good or healthy, and I wish it were not so, and I hope we can change that over time. But for better or worse, this institution, the University of Utah, in which we stand, is seen as a left-leaning institution in a right-leaning state. The scientific community on whole is seen as a very left-leaning institution, again, in a state that is very right-leaning. And that has the tendency to color everything we talk about. And it should not, but it does. And so, again, as a politician who is a right-leaning politician, politics is the only thing that should be divided on this scale, and has been since the beginning of time. But I believe, I will just add, I believe that we should stop looking at things on a right to left paradigm, because I think there is another axis on this paradigm that we should pay more attention to, just as an aside. Other people call it different things. I call it building and destroying, the builders and the destroyers. I think there are people on the far right and the people on the far left that are builders, that are really looking at ways to try to make things better and come together. And those are people we can work with. I think there are people on the far right and the far left, and even in the center, that are destroyers, that just want to, for their own purposes or whatever, tear people down and tear people apart and not fix problems. Okay, but let me now. I digress. Let me go back to my earlier point here. Helping translate, again, the truth of what is happening into the language of the people that we are working with. It is very easy in our society today to get ourselves into our own echo chambers. It's especially easy for politicians. We do this all the time because of social media and the way we communicate now, and there's so many different sources. Finding truth is harder than it has ever been before. But finding our own truth is easier than it has ever been before. And finding the truth that we like, that makes us feel comfortable, that matches our previously held assumptions about the world is so easy. It is easy for politicians on the right, and it is easy for scientists on the left. Okay? And so I submit to you today that your job is not to convince the people that love you as scientists, the people who are my neighbors in the avenues now, who have their Save the Great Salt Lake bumper stickers right next to the Save Bears Ears bumper stickers. You don't need to convince them. They are already there. But they're much easier, and you get lots of pats on the back when you say things that resonate with them. But that does not help move the conversation forward. Okay? We have to, again, understand the people of our state and the legislators of our state, and how to accept truth, how to know what that truth is, with all the exceptions and caveats that you understand. And it's okay to share those exceptions and caveats. Trust me, people can handle this. And admitting that you may not know everything, and that you may be wrong, and that you're only 60% sure or 75% sure or 80% sure will actually strengthen your argument. And if you happen to be wrong, that will be well received. And admitting when we're wrong actually builds trust. It violates Politics 101, I will tell you that. We're supposed to never admit when we're wrong. But I can tell you on those occasions, albeit probably more rare than you would like, when I admit that I am wrong, I can tell you immediately the trust factor goes up. It's very refreshing when that happens. Now, we also live in a time, and back to the social scientist piece of this, I believe that doom and gloom does not result in change. I believe it has never inspired change. And I think that is core to our human nature. When we tell people that the sky is falling, what most people do is they give up. Just think, Well, there's nothing I can do about it. What can my one little thing, if the Great Salt Lake is already done, if it's already dried up and we're all going to die from toxic dust, then I'm just going to go ahead and water my lawn. Okay? I just am. That is just human nature. And it is not helpful. It is not helpful at all. Now, the other thing that is not helpful is when people do good things and people are making change, albeit marginal and small, to be critical of that change. If your reaction to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints donating a historic amount of water was, yeah, that's a drop in the bucket. They could do more. This is not really going to change anything. Then you have the wrong message. Okay? These are moments we should celebrate, because in celebration, we inspire others to do and make change. Whether the change is small or big, we have to celebrate that change to bring people along. I would also encourage you not to mock people and their religious views. Whether you believe or don't, we do live in a state that is highly religious. When I asked the people of our state to join in faith and prayer in asking God to help relieve us of this terrible drought that we have been facing, I knew there would be pushback. I will tell you, I was a little shocked at the amount of pushback and mocking that was received. Because Governor Herbert did this a couple times during his term of governor, and didn't receive the same kind of vitriol and pushback. But here's why I think that really matters. I feel like I know the people. This is one thing. Politicians do tend to be much more in tune with the people that they represent than scientists do, because we interact with them daily. We hear from them daily. We saw, shortly after asking people to pray, we did not see an immediate influx of rain and snow. Okay? I admit that. But I will tell you what we did see. We saw people of faith and people not of faith immediately start using much less water. The conservation that took place in our state over the past 2 summers far exceeded my highest expectations. When we ask people to pray, what I believe and what I understand is people that are praying for more water will use less water. I just absolutely firmly believe that, and I believe that has been proven out. We've seen it over and over and over again. And as I saw people of all faiths, I received letters from our Jewish congregations, our Muslim congregations who held a day of fasting and prayer for water. They and their congregants were also asked to use less water, and they did. Understanding human nature will help us make the changes we need to make. Lastly, and then we'll open it up for questions, the human nature of our legislature. And I want to thank the Speaker of the House for his wisdom. Last year, not this session that we just finished, the session before, we had about a dozen very important water conservation policy bills. And they were not moving at all. And we were just struggling. We just couldn't get them to go across the finish line. And the Speaker said, hey, I have a favor. Can we borrow a couple of Black Hawk helicopters? And I'm like, please tell me why. And he said, well, I want to take our legislators out over the Great Salt Lake. Now, turns out human nature, he understood this with his people. Everyone likes to ride in Black Hawk helicopters. If you invite them to come for a ride in a Black Hawk helicopter, they all showed up. And you laugh, but you would too. So legislators, they got in helicopters, they flew out over the Great Salt Lake, and in less than a week, all 12 bills had passed. Now, they had seen pictures of the Great Salt Lake. They had seen detailed maps of the Great Salt Lake. They had seen aerial footage of the Great Salt Lake. They did not see anything on that flight that they had not seen themselves many, many times. And so, what changed? Well, I firmly believe that in the policy of show, don't tell. We can preach a lot, but if we can show, if we can bring people along with us, give them opportunities to participate, to be part of the solution, it will change their mindset and they will do more. Now, I'm very proud of what the legislature has accomplished over the past 2 sessions. And we should take those victories because incremental change is the only way to get change. Paradigm change takes time. How many of you, I remember growing up, we took a trip to Florida, my entire family, as a kid in the 80s, okay, in a van. We did not know that van had seatbelts in it. We drove all the way to Florida without seatbelts. How many of you, as a kid, never wore a seatbelt? Yeah. How many of you now don't have your kids or grandkids wear seatbelts? You scratched your head. I know you didn't mean to say that. Yeah, okay. Right, paradigm shifts, right? It happened, but it didn't happen overnight. It took time. This paradigm shift is happening incredibly rapidly. But there is an uncomfortableness in human nature when change happens too fast. Okay? And I think that's critically important. We are going faster than I ever thought we would go. But if we start confiscating farms and water shares, what you will see happen is you will see politicians respond very quickly. People will run for office to make sure that we are not saving the Great Salt Lake, and they will be elected. And those are the types of things that you have to think through when we're having these conversations. This legislature is moving. I thought it would take us 5 or 6 years to get a couple of these big bills that change 150 years of water policy in this state. This use it or lose it mentality that we have had from the very beginning, not mentality, but legal structure that we have had, has finally changed. That is worthy of huge celebrations. $1 billion in 2 years in water investment in this state. I never thought in my lifetime we would see that kind of an investment from a legislature. And you know what the legislature hears from the left and from the scientific community? What is wrong with you guys? You aren't doing nearly enough. And human nature is, you know what? Screw you guys. If you don't want our help, we're done. We're out. That's what we can't allow to happen. Okay? Now, I'm not saying you can't be critical. You should be critical, right? But I would say be cautious with your criticism. And when we get victories, celebrate those with us, right? Don't treat them as your enemy. Treat them as your allies, and they will be. Now, I've talked too long. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I governor-splained. We love you. We are going to save the Great Salt Lake. I promise you we are going to save the Great Salt Lake. Legislative leadership and the executive branch are committed to this. This is our top priority. This is it. We're not faking it. This isn't something just to satisfy a portion of our constituents. It is not that. Everywhere I go, this is the question I get. What are we doing to save the Great Salt Lake? That is a paradigm shift. It is being translated into the language of the people of Utah, and they are responding. So let's not lose that momentum. That's all I ask. I have time for 2 questions. Questions?
Governor Cox, thank you very much. Is this on? Everybody
It is.
Hearing? Okay. We very much appreciate your thoughts on this, and I'll ask you the tough question.
Yes.
That a number of people approved asking, if I can put it that way, and that is, should the state set a state goal to raise the lake level to the minimum of a widely accepted healthy range as recommended by some of the or proposed at least as a possible solution by the strike team and some of the other science groups that have looked at the problem?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Yeah, sure. But I'm also going to say this. There are policy things that matter and there are policy things that don't matter. This is a policy thing that doesn't change anything. I know what the average lake level is. I know exactly what it is. I see that number every single day. We can adopt it, sure. There was a legislator who ran a resolution, a non-binding resolution, to set that It didn't pass. I don't care. It's fine. Whatever. I just see these are the things. Like these are the things we get caught up on. Like everybody's mad that that resolution didn't pass, and that resolution does absolutely nothing. It does absolutely nothing. It's great. I mean, the average lake level for the last 120 years is set. I have a graph that I look at every single day that shows that average lake level. I'm doing everything I can to get that back up there. The other thing that is really interesting, the lake has never been at that average lake level. It never is. Go look at it. Look at the line that draws through. All it is this, right? It might be there for a couple days every 8 years, but this is what the lake does. Now it's doing this, which is the problem, right? So yes, my goal, I will sleep much better once we hit that average. Okay? If we want to set that as a goal, yes, sure, great. Whatever. It's my goal. It's everybody's goal. We want to get it there. So yes, and that will do absolutely nothing to get more water to the lake.
You spoke of trust. What are you doing and what are you planning to do in the governor's office to gain trust when it comes to leadership and management of the Great Salt Lake?
So there's a couple things that we're doing that I think are really important. One is just messaging. Messaging really matters. There is a reason that the year before last, I held my budget announcement on the shores of the Great Salt Lake. Now, let me be clear. I just criticize things that won't add water to the lake. Me standing in front of the Great Salt Lake to announce my budget will do nothing to get water to the Great Salt Lake. I admit that. But again, what I'm trying to do is to share that visual with 3.3 million people who may not see it every day, right? So again, helping people to understand what the scope of the problem is and that there is something that they can do about it. So one of the things is government has to be better at this, right? We have to set an example. And that's what we're trying to do with our state facilities. We're trying to upgrade our state facilities. We're removing turf, unnecessary and unused turf. We're trying to really change the way we do things here so that we can model good behavior. I think that's really important. The other piece of this is a piece of legislation that just passed. It is so important. And again, that I don't think got enough attention. This one will do a lot more than setting some whatever level for the lake. And that is a new commissioner to oversee the lake with extraordinary powers that we don't usually give to people. This person that once this bill goes into effect in May will be appointing this person with approval from the Senate, will have the ability to work with and even override other departments and agencies. We have so many people working on the Great Salt Lake, but nobody is tasked with making sure that the water gets to the end of the row. Right? So we're saving water here, but is it really getting where it's supposed to go? That's what this position will do. And I think this will change trust more than anything else, that we have a single person who will report directly to me to make sure that our combined efforts are making a difference. And then we can hold people accountable. We hold this person accountable who reports directly to the governor of the state of Utah. And if it's not happening, then you vote for a new governor. And that's where accountability should be held. And I really believe that this will make a huge difference. And I think we are out of time, and I don't want to keep the next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't say this enough. And I hope you don't feel like I'm being critical of you. That was not my intention. I want to thank you. I want us to be more like you. I want us to be curious. I want us to solve problems working together. And we can't do that without good information and good data. And you are giving us that information and that data. I will just say to conclude, we are having an incredible water year, right? A historic water year. Right now, the other graph I look at every single day, that black line is above the purple lines. It's never been that high since we started tracking. We today are in record territory when it comes to snow water equivalent in our mountains. That is something to be celebrated. Celebrated, okay? And let me just say that nobody in leadership thinks, oh, well, now we don't have to do anything. Now we have a reprieve. I know you're all worried about that. Well, we can't tell them the truth because, yes, it's a great year, but if they think it's a great year, then they'll stop trying. Like, that's the kind of mindset that gets it backwards. We celebrate having a record year, and that means more water to get into the lake. This isn't a time to pause. This isn't a time to stop. It's a time to accelerate the changes that we've already made because we can capture more of that water. Nobody's stopping. Nobody's pausing. Nobody's giving up. We're with you. We're on the same team. God bless you. Thank you.